Alright, I thought that I had already recorded this, but apparently I didn't. So when you first open up the software, it might ask you to verify your age. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. You can just go ahead and you'll see this screen, and when it asks you to verify your age, I usually just hit enter and it doesn't care. So, we're going to go to either, I think home just brings you here. So I like to go to projects, and then you can go ahead and make a new project by clicking on the little plus up at the top, and we're going to choose word blocks and click create. Now this again is the same, all of this is pretty much the same, but they added one feature here, which is the remote control. So what I like to do is right at the beginning go ahead and set things up. So I might set my movement motors, and you can set your movement speed, and whatever your movement motors are, whatever the motors connected to your wheels are, just put those in there. You can set your movement speed, and then you can do anything that you want the robot to do right when the program starts. Like if you're running an autonomous program during the first couple of seconds of the match. So next up, let's go ahead and click on the remote, and it brings up a window like this. And so we're going to add a widget. Now what I have found, and I don't know, hopefully the windows are actually popping up for you guys, is the joystick does not work very well. I prefer the D-pad, because the D-pad has like pretty much discrete buttons, and you'll see that the D-pad has a name, and so if you're happy with that, you can go ahead and click the check button, and now you have a remote control with a D-pad. Now over on the side, you'll see there's an option titled remote control, and under remote control now there is what is called a hat object that says when D-pad, and that has the name of a button. So we're going to go ahead and drag that out. So when the up button is pressed, we want the robot to do something, but I'm going to go ahead and switch that to when the no button is pressed. What do we want the robot to do? So when the no button is pressed, we want the robot to stop moving. So we'll go ahead and take a stop moving icon and put that right there. So when nothing is pressed on the D button, we want the stop button. We want the robot to stop moving. So now I can go back to the remote, and I can drag out another one of these. And now I'm going to say, what do I want the robot to do when the up button is pressed? So I'm going to go to movement, and when the up button is pressed, I want the robot to start moving, and I want the robot to start moving straight. Just go ahead and drive straight forward. And so the steering is the input, and we'll leave the steering at 0. So now I'm going to go back to remote control, and I'm going to get another one of these when the D-pad is pressed. But here, I'm going to switch this one from up to down. Okay, so when the D-pad down is pressed, then I want the robot to drive backwards. So how do I get the robot to drive backwards? So there's a couple different ways. So one thing I could do is I could get the move straight, and oh no, that won't really work. So I want the robot to move backwards. So a couple of things. I could set the movement motors to BA and then tell the robot to move straight, and it would drive backwards. Like basically just make those the opposite. But much better is down here at the bottom, there's the extensions, and I'm going to go ahead and select more movement. So I'm going to click add, and then I'll close out of this. And under more movement, I've got the start moving, and it's got the percentage power. So I'm going to set that to start moving at, and I'll set this to -50, and I will set this to -50. So now when I press the down button, the robot's going to start moving backwards at 50% power. Alright, so what do I want to do next? Well, I'm going to go ahead and move this into the middle, and this way I'm kind of mimicking the layout of the D-pad. Alright, so next up I'm going to go back to remote control, and I'll drag another one of these out here, and I'll say when the D-pad left is pressed, I want the robot to start moving left. So I'll go up to movement, and I'll go get a start moving. And what I'm going to do here is, instead of straight, I'm going to slide this all the way to the left. Now, when I press left, the robot will turn to the left. Next up, I can go back to remote control, and I can say when the D-pad right is pressed, I want the robot to start turning right. So I can go to movement, I can go to a start moving, and instead of straight, I'm going to set this start moving all the way over to the right. So part of the reason why using the joystick is good, or using the D-pad is good and not the joystick, is because when I use the joystick, the robot actually starts mixing the steering, and it's really hard to control when you do that. Alright, so here we go. We have the steering done. Now how do you do the other parts of the remote? So I'm going to go ahead and click back on the remote object, and I'm going to click on the right icon, and I'm going to add another widget, and I'm going to add a vertical slider. So the vertical slider has a name, and the name is SV1. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the check, and then I'm going to go back to the remote, and now you can see that there's an object for the slider. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this out here, the hat object. So when slider SV1 is high, right, so when you slide it up, then I want something to happen. So I'm going to say start moving. Actually, I'm going to go to motors, and here you go. We'll start motor, and you're going to set this to clockwise or counterclockwise. And for the motor, you're going to select whichever motor it is you want to control. So when the slider is high, it's going to start moving the motor clockwise. I'm going to go ahead and get another one of these, and I'll bring this here, and we'll say when the slider is released, I'll go over to movement or motors, and I'm going to say stop motor, and I want to stop the same motor, so I'll say stop motor C. And then when the slider is low, right, I'll go back to motors, and I'm going to say start motor, and again I have to change this to C and change the direction to the opposite. Alright, now I actually don't know what will work specifically for you and your robot, but this is a pretty good example. If you want to have another slider that controls your gripper, you can do that. You can go ahead and click on the right icon, click on the widgets, and you can select another slider, and the next slider you have will have a different name. You can also use a switch to do the same thing, or you can use a button and just have it be when you press the button, the motor moves to one position, and when you press the button again, it moves to another. That is all completely up to you and what works for you and your team. Alright, so I hope you found this helpful, and I hope you can, use this. Now once you're done with all of that, you just upload it to your robot using one of these slots, and it'll tell you that you have to convert your robot to streaming mode, so you can do that. And then once you do, when you play the program, you can move the slider around, or you can press on these buttons, and if you're connected to your robot using Bluetooth, then you will be able to remote control your robot on using the computer screen. Now, the other option is to download this program onto your phone, in which case you can use your fingers on your phone to remote control your robot. Alright, you guys, good luck, and I hope this helps.